today we got to play
Gartenbau.
Okay, so this game is about flowers, but before we get into it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell because board games are awesome. And that's what we do here at Legends of Nirvana. Now, this is from 25th Century. Tell us more about it.
Well, it's actually from this century, 2022.
It says 25th
That's the
century.
company, 25th Century Games, released it. Board Game Geek rating is 7.5. The rank is currently 12,080. It is a 2 to 4 player game, 30 to 60 minutes average length. The questionable thing on here is the age. It says 14 and up. And we played this with Sarah. Yes, we had to give her some guidance, but I just don't
She didn't play competitively.
Yeah, 14 up seems a little
14
high.
and up, I would say that's high. I be at 12, maybe 10. I think 12 maybe to be competitive. But she was able to play. Like, she understood the rules. But there's some strategy in here that, she wouldn't be competitive. So if you've got a bunch of teenagers playing this game, I say teenagers, but, 8, 10, 12, that will be fine.
Conceptually, it's a basic, very simple game, but there's some advanced strategy on how you score points.
Right, so take that for what you will.
All right. It was designed by David Abelson and Alex Johns. Art by Matt Paquette and Company and Todd Sanders. As we mentioned, it's published by 25th Century Games. It's got an MSRP of $59.99. Now, Miniature Market had it up for pre-order for $43.99 with a release for the last quarter of this year, but they're currently out of stock for pre-orders, and it's not up on Card House's website. I didn't see it available for ordering at the moment anywhere. So right now it looks like this is not to be had, but it should be coming out in the fourth quarter of the year.
Yeah, so soonish. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about quality of components. So I like the first player marker.
Well, that was an add-on. It didn't come in the base game. If you buy this retail, you will not get that. You will not get the wooden tokens. You get cardboard.
So sad?
But it was an add-on from the Kickstarter, and it was an add-on at Gen Con. We purchased it. I assume you could probably order it from their website. Yeah. But yeah, I like the add-on pieces. They come in this nice little bag.
So you do get the water components, but like you said, that was an upgrade. Otherwise, it is cardboard. We will be basing our rating off of this one. And then you also have cardboard tiles, quite a few of them. I think they're pretty good quality. Yep. They're linen finish.
Nice
they have good thickness. So overall, I really like the feel of these, and they're pretty good as far as that is concerned. Overall, with the added upgrades, I'm probably going to give this a 6 or 6.5. I mean, I do like the components, but again, this will take it to a 6.5. Because
I'm probably more of a 7 for it. I like the fact that these are such a nice linen finish on all of the pieces of cardboard. Mm-hmm. With the wooden bits. Now, I'd probably give it more of a 6 or 6.5 with just the ones that come in the retail box.
Right, and I guess you get these really cool wheelbarrows.
Yeah, the wheelbarrows are neat.
And they are easy to use. They actually slide this one side, so it is easy to pick up and drag, which that was actually good thinking on their part. They did it on both sides.
Yeah. And it's got a modular board. It's kind of like a puzzle piece for, you can set it based on player count. So the different combinations for 2 to 4 players are on there. So it was kind of cool. And it's also got a whole different set of scoring tokens for beginners versus the standard game. So you've got a lot of components that give you variability in the game.
Yeah. So let's then talk about theme. So the theme obviously is that you are planting a garden and you are trying to make your garden the most attractive garden. But to be able to do that, you've got to plant seedlings and create flowers, and then further on, create these garden well, actually, seedlings,
plants and flowers.
Plants and then flowers. So you're kind of working through that process and trying to build the best you can. However, there are some things. So anytime you do make a plant, obviously there's victory points, but then you have these special flowers that you get to draft at the beginning of the game. And they give you scoring mechanisms. But anyway, so theme-wise, it's a garden theme, and I love the realistic flowers on there. Like they have the artist did really, really well, and the fact of appearance. I mean, these look like real flowers. They're beautiful. I think they did a great job on that. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I like the way that they made it. Like the primary color ones, you could only get if you did pure flowers, and then if like the greens and the oranges, you could make those by mixing blue and yellow, or yellow
like
and red.
The purple is the
or red and blue for purple, or you could just do 2 purples to get generated. So you could basically you can tailor it. It gives you a little more flexibility for those tiles, and I thought that was a clever mechanism.
Yeah.
But yeah, thematically, it's very attractive. It's a very appealing appearance on the table. The only grievance, I guess, would be that the flowers are all exactly the same for a given type of flower when you look at it. But then again,
well, it's,
it makes it easier for the puzzling of it. So it's your batching sets. So yeah, I can see why they did it. It does get a little redundant when you have 20 yellow flowers that all look the same next to each other in a pattern.
Well, now here's something: the flowers they could have differentiated, but they didn't there. Because that one I don't think would have affected gameplay too much.
Yeah.
And they didn't. Well, no, they've got a couple purple on here.
Yeah,
they did a little bit of variability. They did a little bit, but I wouldn't call it a lot. But anyway, no, the art's still good. I think. I think it's very beautiful. Giving it a score. How are you feeling?
I mean, it's an abstract puzzle in essence, but it is attractive with the art and the flowers.
Well, they gave it a theme, sense. Right?
Yeah, it does.
It's a puzzler, but they gave it a theme, and I think it's a decent theme.
I'll probably give it a 7.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking a 7 with the art component to it. They did, and you are gathering sun and water is what, like the resources and things like that. It makes sense in the fact that you have to have sun and water to plant things, and that's what's needed, and each of the plants require different things. That all makes sense to me as a gardening kind of thing. All right, so let's then talk about Rulebook, Randy.
So the Rulebook is 11 pages. It's got a nice cover on it. And on the back, it's got, if you're playing the basic game, the starting tiles with what your set will contain. The rules basically have a very simplistic setup. It doesn't take a lot to get this to the table. It's very easy.
Yeah, it's very easy.
But it breaks out the standard game and then the advanced gardener's game, which is, we'll get to when we talk gameplay. We'll talk about the differences on those. But basically, it shows you your different choices you make, which are very basic choices. You can go 2 different locations, which we'll get into again in gameplay. And when you do that, you get different options at each one of those you can take. And then basically tells you how to score at the end of the game. That's all there is to it. There are some FAQ for some of the more advanced scoring tiles in the back, which is nice. Walks you through each of the different tiles and talks about how they work. So all in all, it's an effective rule book, and it's not very long for this type of game. You wouldn't expect it to be, nor would you want it to be. So I'm going to probably give it an 8. I think it does its job, does it well.
Awesome. That's fantastic. All right. So let's actually talk about gameplay, okay? So when you start the game, you end up with flowers. We're going to steal a couple. All right. And they're going to be drafting. It is how many more than player count?
There's 2 ways. So first of all, let's go to the basic game. If you're starting out or learning the game, you're going to get a set. Basically, it's going to have a different insect on the back.
Okay.
And you will have a predefined set of 5 tiles that you will get handed to you. Everybody's are basically the same with just different flowers generating the different scoring. It's real simple, and all of them are positive. I mean, all the scoring is positive, but they all work together pretty well.
Okay, so
all right.
But in normal land, you're going to be drafting, right? So there's one that you won't be able to see, and then there's one that you will be able to see.
So you'll have a set of 12 stacks of 2 out, and you'll draft from those 3 different sets of 6, or you'll end up with 6 tiles, 3 sets of 2. So of those 6, you keep 5 and you discard 1.
Magic, because we reset the board, guys, just for you guys. All right, so we're going to basically, I'm going to take my worker, and I can only move 1 or 1.5 spaces with my worker, and we'll talk about that, unless I end up paying resources to do that. But the beginning of my round. I'm not going to. So I have the option of either taking resources at the tile location or picking up the tile. Now, if I were to take the resources option, I'm just going to take the resources and that's going to be the end of my turn. But if I then choose to take a tile, I'm going to end up taking this tile here and I'm going to place it. Now, when you go to place it, it does not have to match. So, for example, just because I have an orange flower, it does not mean that it has to touch my orange flower. But it can go here on this other side if I wanted to. Now, typically, though, if you do have a match, you almost always kind of want to take it unless you're setting yourself up for something else. And anyway, so you're going to do that. Now, the biggest thing, though, just because I don't have a match, for example, if I didn't have one, I still have to touch either adjacent.
Horizontally or vertically, not diagonal.
Correct. So you always have to do that. So in that case, it is like dominoes, but you do not have to match the pattern, which is a little bit different. All right, so you're going to place that now. That is an additional turn. Now for it. Now, the other option is I can go 1.5 spaces, which is kind of this here. Now, if I'm going to do this, I've got a couple of things that I can do. I can either build me a plant or build me a flower. Now, this is early game, so in this particular instance, if I could build an orange right now, if I wanted to, because I have 2 orange that are touching. However, I need 3 sun and 1 water, which I don't have, okay? So it doesn't make sense for me to go there. But my turn would have ended when I took that tile,
right.
okay?
And now, next player does not count the person who's already on a petal.
Correct.
They skip that and go to the next open spot, which would be this petal. So I could either go here or I could go to the dot, as you mentioned. But you always stop on the first dot. You never pass a dot.
Now, if he didn't want these double blues, because blues are completely useless to him, maybe he wants that blue and purple because it matches perfectly.
Yeah, and I could pay a resource and skip that to go to the next one to take this tile instead.
Yeah, and then he would place it over there perfectly. All right, so if we're to go and buy these tiles, there's something that that I wanted to mention is that a plant cost goes up over the course of the game. But not only does the cost go, the victory points go up, right? So, so there is some advantages. There is some advantages.
Well, there is an advantage and disadvantage because
Correct.
the cost goes up, the victory points on it go up. But if you ever decide to play one of these bonus tiles, it covers up 2 of those plants. So if you spent high cost to get one with a lot of victory points, you're losing those victory points by covering it.
Yeah, so you have to make sure that they're worth it because honestly, about midway in the game, I realized it wasn't worth it to build the flower. Basically, I built the 2 that had value to me and then I built the 3rd one just because, or no, I didn't even build that 3rd one because I was like, hey, wait a second, I only gained 1 point. And that takes up my turn, and I spent these resources. I might as well just take that turn and build something else.
Because the 5 starter tiles you get, if you're playing the basic game, when we found it was most advantageous to go ahead and just build all those flowers. They were all valuable. But when you get your set of 6 that you're picking 5 from, in many cases you'll end up ones that are counterproductive for you to build. Not because they wouldn't be scoring points, but just strategically, it would take you a lot of effort to get the points from them. So it was more beneficial to try to strategize and pick 2 or 3 to target and then just maximize your points for those.
Well, and they have to make sense. Like I had 3 tiles or 2 tiles about making holes, and we'll talk about holes just here in a second. So basically, as you keep adding tiles, you can eventually create a hole if you wanted to, like here, okay? So that's considered a hole in the player board, and that will trigger some points, maybe. But, I had that, but that's not what I played first, and by the time I got to it, I'm like, how many holes can I honestly make? Like, this is not worth it to me. So once I got rid of those, now the one thing is they are very varying. Like, this one ended up needing me 45 points for 8 of the purple. But this one is you get 12 plus 2 of the identical pairs. So it's like this one, it would take you a lot longer. But you get scoring quite significantly.
Yeah, but they do combo. Some of them can combo nicely because I had one that was for similar to yours, but for yellow flowers. But then I had another one that gave me 4 sets of yellow, blue, and red flowers. So if I created a bunch of red and blue to go along with my yellows, I got a lot of points.
But I'll be honest though, if I didn't already have this one, because this one's the 8 for the 45, right? So 8 times 2 is 16, so 16 plus 12 is 28. So this tile is only max, well, it's not max, that's the other piece of it, because you can keep building, but it's like, okay, 28 for 45 for the same amount of work. And I got lucky and they did combo, but if I were to just have this at the end of the game, right, when I hadn't fully fleshed out building and I only got my 12 points, like that may have not been worth it if I had 2 6s, right?
Right.
So that's what we're trying to say is in the course of the game, there comes a point where these are not advantageous, especially if you don't already have points on the board to make those trigger.
Yeah, because you're sacrificing way more points covering up in many cases than what you think you'll likely get by the end of the game, because the game sneaks up on you. The ending of it will sneak up because the ending is triggered when 4 of these petals are vacant.
And part of me at the beginning was like, oh, I'm just going to get all the seedlings I need, and then I'll go and make my thing. But I realized that wasn't very advantageous because other people were buying up the flowers and doing this, and for the longest time, I didn't know what I was using these resources for until I went to actually go buy a plant halfway through the game. Like, I was like, oh, they have value. I don't know. This COVID crisis kicked her butt. My mental fog is strong, so I don't know where I was. If I were to play it again, I would play it a little differently, but that's good. That's good.
Now, I will say that when we first played it, using the basic tiles,
yeah, because you played it again with another group of people.
The ending of the game felt like it kind of just dragged. It was like we got all of our basic tiles down, and then it was just a matter of running the clock to try to score a few points by making some plants. But in general, it just felt like the game should have ended before it did. But when we played it with where we drafted these tiles, it felt entirely different.
To be fair, you were the only one drafting for a reason. We draft based on color.
Yeah. but whenever I was lining them up, I was like, there's a lot more strategy because you have to decide, is it valuable for me to play these? Whereas the first time it was just a no-brainer. You wanted to play your flowers. Now it was like, well, is it really worth it for these flowers? And that added a whole nother layer to the strategy that I think was missing. So I liked it way more playing it the second time around with the taking of the
Well, and I think it makes it more relevant to get those early tiles that aren't worth much to get these out, because then it makes sense. Oh, I'm trading 6 for 12 points. Okay, that makes sense to me with the potential of more, right? Versus me trying to battle, well, I get 12 points now. Why am I going to waste a turn for maybe 14? Like, that didn't make sense to me. So I absolutely think that. Yeah,
and I also think these tiles are more advanced to try to solve for, because there's some of them that are just pure victory points tiles. Even in the advanced tiles, there were a few of those. But for the most part, a lot of these had to do with orientation of where they were on your board, which totally changed things. Because like I have one that was based upon how many flowers were touching that flower. So you would have to basically cluster all your flowers together to get the most points from it. I played it, but I didn't do very well for it. I got like one tile touching it.
Yeah.
The thing is there's a lot more thought that you have to put into about the orientation of things on your board. So I think it added a lot more dimension to the game playing the advanced mode.
Yeah, I could see what you were saying, because you did at the end. I started to have to think I was like, hold up, maybe I'm playing this wrong. So overall, though, if we had to give it a score, what are you thinking?
I enjoyed it. I don't know if I enjoyed it as much as the framework we played the other day, because I think that one had the fact of how easy it was, just the very concept of it, but the scoring was, I like the scoring mechanism on it. I think it was a little more streamlined. This one is a lot more thought-provoking, but it's still just basic actions you're taking. You're either playing one of your scoring tiles, or buying a plant tile, or you're acquiring tiles, or getting resources. That's basically all there is to it. One of those 4 actions. I'm thinking I'm probably about 7.5 on this one. Is where I'm at.
I think I'm at a 7 for this, and I'll explain it for a little bit. I will say that it had a little bit of surprise crunchiness, which I can appreciate. I did. It was a little bit of surprising there. But that's just it. It was a little surprising when you consider the basic level of actions. Now, we've had a few that were like that, right? That they were pretty basic, but then they surprised you on the crunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost wish I would have played the basic game, because I would have enjoyed that more. I can't really explain why I didn't have as much fun with this one as some of the other ones we've played. And it may be because there's no player interaction, which I typically like, but then there's so few choices. Placement, like, there's a little bit of placement in this domino kind of thing, but not really. So I think that's really where it was for me, why I didn't find as much enjoyment, because I was expecting more for the pattern creation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it was there, because, anything could touch anything, and, it's not about so much placement as just trying to match things. And when you get these Tetris pieces, you almost feel like it should be a little bit more gearing towards placement, getting the right tile to put on the board. Like, if you got a crappy tile, it didn't hurt you any. You just placed it at the edge of your board and called it a day.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there was tiles that were definitely more beneficial that I was trying to seek out. Now, there was a couple of times where I paid extra resources to get them because they were perfectly what I needed to line up on my board. Because one of the things we didn't mention is when you do place a plant, it can't go on one tile. It has to cross a border into another tile. So you can set up a pattern that's going to allow you to place multiple plants if you do it right. But you've got to orient them the way you need them in order to do it, and you have to orient them in such a pattern that you create the squares you need if you're planning on playing these flower tiles.
Right. I mean, and in that essence, there was some placement, but just overall, it just felt, I don't know. I mean, it's still a 7. It's not that it was a bad game in any stretch of the imagination. It was fine. There was some strategic to it. I just can't get it any higher because my fun level factor wasn't there.
In the end, I mean, I think I feel the same way because of the fact that, like I mentioned, framework, it felt like the same kind of strategy and pattern laying, but it was much shorter. It was, the scoring pattern was so elegantly designed that it was very simplistic, and it didn't overstay its welcome at the table.
Well, and I think that's the thing. Now that you say that, and I was kind of thinking it, but I couldn't really put words around it. If I had played the basic game where it seemed a lot more easygoing, and a lot of people said that they absolutely loved it, that maybe they tried to straddle two worlds, and maybe they didn't quite succeed in that. Like, you have the strategic bit, but then you have the more streamlined, easy kind of flow, and maybe they didn't straddle that world good enough. Not like framework. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, that's where it was. So, anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We had an absolute blast. We hope to catch you guys again later.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.